Okay, so I never really been a big fan of change. If I like something, I'll stick with it for a very long time, especially my choices of tech. For example, my first code editor was Notepad++, then Sublime Text, then to my current Visual Studio Code. But a year ago, I made a switch to WebStorm as a lifelong Visual Studio Code user. Look, I was pretty set to hate every aspect of this WebStorm like I've been doing for the last 7 years.
Well, because of this.
Of course, I did still have few problems. But unless JetBrains really screws me up here, I don't think I'll ever be returning to Visual Studio Code anytime soon.
I'm not going back.
Hey mate, did you try VSCode, Vim, Emacs or Notepad++? My last code editor was Visual Studio Code, so I guess you could say I experienced the best that open source community had to offer. Oh mate, but Visual Studio Code is a bit bloated. Shh. I know, I just wish somebody had told me that before. It's the age-old question, Visual Studio versus WebStrom, mom versus dad, tab versus spaces. There is really no clear answer.
Except that if you choose spaces for the last
I'm not
one.
hiring him. He uses spaces, not tabs.
I see.
And I'll admit it, when I was younger, I was your textbook WebStrom hater. I thought WebStrom users were a bit technologically challenged and very superficial, which brain-dead enterprise users used. So the choice of code editor really depends on your use case. I do a lot of web development work, so I found that everything runs so much smoothly and so much faster on WebStorm. For me, I have always been a big fan of Visual Studio Code. Code editor just looked and felt great. The point is, I was used to it because it was the only thing I ever known. And Visual Studio Code was just comfortable.
The high memory usage, the performance issues, and the constant need to troubleshoot problems.
Was all just a bit too much to handle. Now around this time, WebStorm was about a year into its latest release. I put my bias to side and brought my first ever JetBrains product. And I was surprised. The interface combined with intelligent code assistant is seriously no joke. It's clearly the WebStorm is trying to go for a productive user experience with all those keyboard shortcuts, code navigation, and the fact that the main icon is literally a storm.
Fuck you.
Now, as many of you probably heard before, the feature seriously destroyed the other code editors out there. But JetBrains really did the magic with this one. The clean interface looks pretty nice, and you know what? The extensions look and feel like luxury, and working on it feels enjoyable. The code navigation is very rich, but what I can say is that WebStorm sort of feels like I'm using a big code editor with plenty of keyboard shortcuts, but not in a bad way, if that makes any sense. But as good as WebStorm is, there are still things I struggled with and didn't really like that I really missed from Visual Studio Code. JetBrains' interaction design philosophy is to mimic the traditional IDE and leverage experience people already have on their day-to-day basis. For example, using keyboard shortcuts will mimic real-life actions, and sometimes this can be applied to some confusing ways. Formatting is whack. Without formatting, I find that it slows down my workflow by a ton. It's insane. And let's talk about toolbar. It's very pretty, but it's not functional as the one in Visual Studio Code. I was like, really? Look, I get the argument. WebStorm is better. As a software engineer with 7+ years of experience, I tend to value my time more. Trust me, it will make day and night difference. See you in the next video.